Welcome to Hoovie's Garage, the dumbest automotive channel in all of YouTube, and this might be my greatest find in a long time. It is a 2008 Shelby GT500, but it wasn't bought by some boomer and put away and preserved. It has 210,000 miles on it, has all of the patina, the wear and tear showing that mileage, and I bought it for only $14,000. So it was the cheapest Shelby GT500 in the USA. $14,000 for a 500 horsepower V8 with a 6-speed manual in this beautiful reimagining when Shelby came back to Ford 1 year prior. A major piece of history, but a piece of history that was used and enjoyed, and it is incredibly cheap. So I am so happy that I found this thing using AutoTempest, the best place to search for a used car online, because it combines all the major listing sites into one search, and you can differentiate by mileage, by color, by whatever you want, just like if you're searching individually on one site, except for all the major listings. So I was able to find this. So if you go search for a 2007 or 2008 GT500 right now, you won't find one for under 20 grand. So finding one for $14,000 thanks to AutoTempest, it seemed like a big achievement, but the 210,000 mile mark, and I was buying it sight unseen from California, so I had no idea how it was going to turn out. Now be sure to click the link below and use AutoTempest like I do every day to find deals like this, but also tell your friends, especially if they're shopping for cars, to use AutoTempest. But I'm on there every day, you should be too. They supported Car Trek for years and Hoovie's Garage, so please do me a favor and click the link below and use AutoTempest. Tell everybody about it. Now today I'm going to give a tour of this Shelby, which does have a surprise under the hood, and also we're going to take it to the dyno shop to see how much power it's putting out. This one 500 horsepower from the factory, but it has some extra goodies on it, so we'll see. But before I give you a tour of this hoopty Shelby, let's go back to the 1960s to give some historical significance to this, where Carroll Shelby had partnered with Ford, made famous in the recent Ford versus Ferrari movie, where Ford was trying to buy Ferrari but then got rejected and decided to beat Ferrari at their own game, and consulted with Carroll Shelby to build a race-winning car and team, which they did. At the same time, Carroll Shelby was building his own tuned Cobras with Ford engines that came from AC, actually a British company, the shells of the Cobra, along with tuned Mustangs. In 1965 was the first GT350. 1966 there's the Hertz Mustangs like I had, but very similar to the 65s. And 67 was a big change when they came out with the GT500. 428 cubic inches, 350 horsepower, and a muscle car legend was born. But by 1970, Carroll Shelby ended his relationship with Ford and completely moved on. In the ensuing decades, he partnered with Chrysler and made some crazy creations, including the Dodge Omni Shelby, like a hot hatch, along with his own bespoke roundup build, the Shelby Series 2, which had an Oldsmobile Aurora engine in it, like a 4-liter V8. So he went to Chrysler, he went to GM, but then in 2007, it was a major announcement that he was going back to Ford and consulted to build this. On the all-new Ford Mustang platform, which looked much more retro than previous generations, which lent itself very well to giving a classic Shelby treatment, and, well, a new legend was born. So when this came out, I was around 20 or 21 years old, and I thought it was the coolest thing ever. The Ford GT had just gone out of production, so this was the new halo car from Ford that everybody was talking about. And even though it had a supercharged 5.4 liter under the hood, it really has very little in common with the supercharged 5.4 liter on the outgoing Ford GT. That was an aluminum engine, this one's an iron block, different supercharger, similar heads and some other tricks, but very little similarities when it comes to the engine. And unlike the Ford GT, there's very little difference in the engineering that makes this car more race car other than the massive horsepower bump. At its principle, the engineering is basically the same. Yes, it does have bigger Brembo brakes and tweaked suspension, larger SVT special vehicle team wheels, and you can see this one having 210,000 miles on it. It came from California, but still wearing on the finish. There's that GT500 stripe and the Cobra snake on there, but really this car has more in common with a 1960s GT500 than, say, a new modern car, because at its back you can see more faded, ruined wheels here. is a live rear axle.
Let me try and get under there so you can see it better, but look at that dinosaur technology in the rear suspensions.
So that was the biggest punchline with these, a total dinosaur when it comes to the technology, and for the money, this was about $50,000 new. You could buy a BMW M3, you could buy a serious performance vehicle, not with this much horsepower, but something that could handle a lot better than this for around the same money. But was it as cool? I don't think so. And like I said, this fastback redesign with these wide hips lends itself so well to the vintage Shelby treatment. And this vapor silver, well, a very muted color. And this one was optioned without the stripe. And 210,000 miles, so it has every bit of the swirl marks and imperfections, even a little bit of bubbling in the paint. And I believe it's all original here on the hood. But since it's California, it's been blessed with a nice climate, so all the trim, all the rubber still looks very nice on this thing, and the interior looks like it was really well kept as well. Now, another letdown of these Mustangs, of course, and this era of cars in general, is the interior. A lot of hard plastics before Americans could really figure out how to match European rivals when it came to this stuff, and you do have a lot of that. There is an attempt at a leather door panel right here, and they all start to peel back like this. Same with the dash. They tried, and it does look a little better than, say, a C5 Corvette. And this trim here does have some texture to it, but then we're back to hard plastics right here. Now, the seats have nice bolstering and look sort of vintage, have the Cobra logo in there, so that looks fantastic. The 6-speed manual was something I certainly missed in my 2021 GT500 that was yellow, 760 horsepower in that car, but a dual clutch is fantastic as well. Shaker stereo, which is actually pretty good, and then, well, all the generic Ford stuff like the climate control, the keys could look like out of a 90s F-150, but what isn't out of a 90s F-150 is this engine. Even though it is an iron block, it is special to the GT500. There's the vintage gauges, including a PSI readout for the supercharger. Speaking of, well, you're gonna see in a little bit what surprised me when this car showed up. Now, I bought it sight unseen from California. It got shipped here, and squeaking at me because, look at that. A VMP supercharger, which is supposed to make this thing good for another 100 or 150 horsepower. The belt's a little noisy right now, so I'll turn it off. It eventually quits doing that when the engine's warmed up, so I'm hoping it's not the supercharger that's going out, it's just the belt or a tensioner or something like that. But look at this, 210,000 miles, and yes, it does need some cleanup for sure, a little detail, but it does look pretty darn good. Aftermarket intake's nice and dirty. I mean, it's not abused, but it just looks like a normal used car with a bunch of miles on it. And the fact that it's a Shelby GT500, that just seems so cool to me. You see the strut brace going across, and then you can see powered by SVT there on the valve covers, but otherwise doesn't look anything crazy in performance under here other than that big supercharger. Now, I do love the patina, but one thing I might fix is the right headlight, which is getting some water in there, some condensation, so maybe I'll replace it with a used one that's showing a bit of wear to match this one, which I really don't want to polish all this out and make it too pretty because I think it's just so neat this way, how it has this natural patina and the bumps and bruises and the price to match, $14,000. Now, I did say earlier on Auto Tempest you probably won't find one for under 20. I was looking at Auto Tempest just now, and there's basically none under 30. The next cheapest I can find is one for $22,000 with 110,000 miles, which sounds like a pretty good deal. Now, there's one more thing I'd like to show you, and that's in the trunk, because the original floor mats are in there. As far as I know, at least they look at, and look at the condition of them. So clearly this was a well-enjoyed but well-loved car. But still, I bought it sight unseen from a used car dealer thinking it would need some things, it would have some issues considering the age and the mileage, but this Shelby feels really, really good. Let's take it for a drive. Oh, the check engine light's kicked on, and I really don't care. That probably would be a problem in the People's Republic of California where they have inspections and you can't have it on, but in Kansas, it really doesn't matter. And the fun part about the live rear axle is it makes it very easy to spin around. It's ridiculously easy. I mean, with that supercharger, I just barely have to touch it. And that back there is why these Mustangs got such a bad reputation for losing control and going into crowds, because you floor it, it breaks traction immediately, and you don't really know what's going to happen. Now, Ford could have easily have tuned some kind of independent rear suspension on this thing. Jack Roush did with their cars on this same platform, but apparently they didn't because of cost. These were already very expensive, almost double a Ford Mustang GT, and they also must have thought that it was just good enough, and honestly, I think so too. When they reviewed this thing on Top Gear, they called it irresponsible to have a car with this much power be engineered like this. Jeez, yep. It's trying to kick the tail out and go into the ditch. But then again, Jeremy Clarkson said I would buy this car if I was the type of person to look at my sister and go, So there was already some bias there. Jeez. Just instant power all the time. And I can't help but wonder how much this supercharger is helping. Did the original supercharger fail and it was cheaper to put on this aftermarket one? And how much more power is it putting out than stock, if any? Come on, hook up. Whoa! It feels like more. It feels like a whole lot more. Like somewhere in the 600s, like the CL65, which was $19,000. So this, from a dollar per horsepower standpoint, it seems unbeatable. Here, one more pull. Let's try and be sane, car. Jeez, that pulls. That's really good. That's really good. So that's why, instead of going to the Car Wizard and seeing everything that's wrong first, I want to see how much power this thing is putting out. So we're going to go to Dave Polk at Polk Performance, hook this thing up, and see what happens. 210,000 miles on this thing. My love of Shelby's, as you know, goes way, way back. The GT500 I had before, traded it in for the Z06. I really missed that car, but I knew it was going to depreciate in half in the next 5 or 10 years. And then my 66 Hertz Mustang was a wild and crazy race car that I never got around to driving on the track, so I did sell it. But this intersects my worlds of a love of hoopties and a love of Shelby's, and puts it together in this delightful way to where I am absolutely giddy to own this thing. Just hear that supercharger. It's awesome. I backed in and Dave's not wasting any time. Polk Performance.
We're ready to get at it.
Yeah, the dyno's back there. What do you think? I know you've done quite a few of these, right?
Yeah, so this one's the 2008, and I'm pretty certain they're 500 at the crank.
That's
factory.
correct, yes. But
And,
look under the hood. There's a little bit more going on.
Okay. Yeah, it's got the VMP upgrade.
So that's like a day 2 modification for somebody wanting to tune it?
Yeah, better increase the boost a little bit. He's got a smaller pulley on it, looks like, so they crank the boost up pretty good.
So what would this have done horsepower from the factory, like a stock one?
The stock one at the wheels about right around 430 or 440 on my dyno.
Okay.
On a good one that's running really good.
And what does this usually do?
So I think that this setup here increases the boost to right around 12, maybe a little bit more.
It was
on the pulley.
maxing out on the gauge in there.
Was it?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that with that smaller pulley, I'm not quite sure, but I imagine we're going to see 12, maybe a little more.
But 210,000 miles, I left out that part. So
Yeah, we're going to test the endurance of the engine today. We'll see how it handles the dyno now.
have you grenaded a Ford one before?
Not yet. Not yet. Been pretty fortunate on that.
Well,
We're going to find the limit.
yeah, this might be the first. We'll see.
supercharger making all that noise. Whoa. Okay. What do we have here? 573 and 535 torque? Yeah, that's pretty awesome. It might have a little more. I took it right to 6,000 right around there. What? And it's still climbing a bit. So we can make another pass. Because I don't know when they set the rev limit to or anything. We'll rev it out a little further and see if it grows. Did he find more? Not quite. Yeah, I think we built some heat into it, so we dropped a little bit of power. Yeah. But I think we're about right there. That's pretty awesome. That's that's 140 or 50 more than stock. That's really good. With 210,000 miles. Yeah, you just broke in and run again. That's insane. This might be my best purchase in a long time. Thank you so much for watching.